Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, and I would like to first also thank CAUSE and SEIU, Clinicus, Santa Paula, and LULAC for Santa Paula Town Hall and LULAC for putting this on. We have a lot of issues facing our county. On the Transportation Commission, I see that we need to make sure that we have cheap, affordable transit, something that we don't have. And it has to be comprehensive, so people can actually take a bus from here to there in Ventura County. We also have to look at, obviously, our jobs and those great job producers like our naval base and make sure that we can protect our naval base. But also the great quality of life that we have in Ventura County includes companies, CEOs who want to come live here. We have a low crime rate, and we do whatever we can to assure that we have safe streets in Ventura County. Corporations such as Amgen in my district and Baxter, people want to come and work here and live here, so it's important that we keep a good quality of life, and keeping crime down and keeping congestion down is important also. Affordable housing is a huge issue. I agree very strongly with Mr. Herrera that we have to make sure that people who are working in our fields have a place to live that's humane. Last night I was able to talk to some farm worker women, and it is appalling to me that we have people out in the fields that are underage, for example. I'm hearing about 13 and 14-year-olds in the fields. I'm hearing about women who, without protective clothing, is doing spraying and having the impacts on their skin, in their lungs. We have a problem with illegal immigration in our county, in our state, in our nation. And we shouldn't just be winking and nodding. Unless we get our Congress together with Republicans and Democrats working together, they're not going to be able to address these very important issues.
Thank you very much, Ms. Burke.
Thank you.
Mr. Good evening. Next, Mr. Moraga.
Supervisor Parks. All candidates running for office in multicultural districts, they all promise, oh yes, we're going to have a very diverse staff when we get elected to Congress or whatever position that they get elected to. I like to judge a candidate based on their current positions in government. So can you tell me in Thousand Oaks, which is in your district about 20%, approaching 20% Latino population, how many people do you have on your staff in frontline positions who are Latinos?
I don't look at people, first of all, in terms of what color they are, what ethnicity they are. I look for quality. I have one Hispanic, one Latino, if you will, and I have 2 Asian and 1 Caucasian. So I guess the majority would be what would be referred to as minority or emerging population. But like I said, I don't see people in terms of color, and I realize that in a country we have both majority and minorities. We have to respect all, and I don't see people in terms of what ethnicity they are. I don't see people in terms of what party they are, Republican or Democrat. I think that we all need to work together, and some people need a little bit more help than others.
But given that the new congressional district will have such a large Latino population, don't you think you will go ahead and have to increase your staffing level as far as to represent that population?
From what I heard, staffing for congresspeople are close to 30 people. I have 5, so absolutely, I would definitely want to have someone on my staff, if not several on my staff, that will do a good job representing me and getting input. I work very hard to get input from people. I've started a lot of municipal advisory councils, and as ways to get information, having senior summits, as ways to get information. And unlike our present congressperson, I feel it's very important to have accessibility, to have town halls, to have forums. My phone number, I give out 805-497-0450. You can also email me at linda@sendlinda.com. I just feel it's very important to hear from the people. I don't have all the answers, but I know I will be a better decision maker if I can hear from people. And so I really look forward to hearing from everyone and hearing your opinion.
Thank you very much. Next, Manuel.
Thank you. This question is for you, Mr. Cruz. The Latino community is tired of being taken for granted many times.
Regarding immigration comprehensive reform, it's a mess up there in Congress. How are you going to go ahead and resolve that issue? Are you going to be able to push for full comprehensive reform, or is it going to be a step-by-step process?
Well, first of all, I don't think we can deport or should deport every illegal immigrant, 11, 12, 13 million people. I don't think we should grant them all citizenship either. And I think what we do need is an effective guest worker program. We've had them in the past, but one that doesn't abuse people. I feel strongly that, just Saturday was Cesar Chavez Day, and how much has happened since the days when I first saw him speak at my college, and then followed him off to UCLA where he was going to speak, and actually got pulled over by them. They were worried, why is this woman following? But grew up without eating grapes and all that. But realizing though what we have done since the 1950s out in the fields, we have the same kind of situation we had back then, and it is shocking to me. We definitely need to have a good comprehensive immigration reform, and we're not going to have it unless Democrats and Republicans will work together. We can just, they are actually refusing to work together, and that's why I believe running as an independent, I have the ability to work with both sides of the aisle. I think we need more people who can shed their partisanship and work with both sides of the aisle.
Thank you very much. Manuel, one more time to Mr. Payne.
Mr. Herrera,
refinancing their homes.
Thank you very much. Manuel to Ms. Parks.
Ms. Parks, on the same topic, in Ventura County, nationwide, the Latino community was the sector of the community that suffered the most of the real estate crash. There were a lot of real estate agents, even Hispanic real estate agents, that took advantage of Hispanics and Latinos. And a lot of them are in jail now, and more will be going in that direction. But what they brought to the country in these communities is only a percentage of the big chunk of money that was lost. Investors and other companies and people lost their homes, their money. But we don't see the big top executives or these financial institutions, the ones that made the billions of dollars in jail. If elected, what specifically are you planning to do to correct that situation?
And it is still going on. We're seeing a lot of people being taken advantage of. And I think, first of all, beefing up our enforcement ability. And in Ventura County, our district attorney has been working very closely with the real estate industry to help educate people so that they don't end up in situations where they've signed off on loans that they certainly can't afford. But also, I think we need to have a Congress that is accountable. We should not have had to pass a law that said that Congress members can't do inside trading. And there are just laws that are out there on the books, and I think that we need to enforce them. And sometimes because of special interests, we end up in situations where the laws are not getting enforced. And I think it is really important to have the laws in place. And I think by not taking special interest money, I don't take money from corporations or PACs, unions, or just from individuals. I think that's one way that you can reduce the influence of special interests. Legislation is being written based on who's contributing to what Congress member, and that's wrong. So I think first of all is making sure that we have people who are independent of special interests. Otherwise, we're not going to get those laws in place.
Thank you very, very much. Okay, Tim, back to...
Yeah, I think we're going to do a bit of a catch-up here, and we'll go to Assemblywoman Brownlee. You know, I know that you've worked for several years trying to get school financing.
let's try and be as specific to the question, your answer, because I think everybody, really, I hope you're going to be making your assessments as to how responsive they are to the question. How do you propose to bridge the substantial socioeconomic gaps between East and West Ventura County? Okay, Ms. Parks, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, just do what he just said. That was great. I do think of some other things in addition to that. First of all, we do have a lot of great economic generators, great businesses in our county, and some of them were mentioned. But I also know that we have corporations out there that aren't even hiring, not only from Ventura County, they're not even hiring people from the United States. I know of companies that ValueClick talks about having a couple hundred openings that they cannot fill. I heard Semtech has a couple hundred openings they cannot fill. These are jobs that we need skilled workers for. We need to have engineers and scientists and technologists and mathematicians, and we're not getting them out of our schools. And the state of California doesn't prioritize education enough, higher education particularly. They're talking about freezing the Cal State enrollment. They're cutting back wonderful community college programs where you have job training. Oxnard College is particularly being hurt. We need to support our community colleges, our state colleges, our UCs. It's becoming inaccessible to people because of the high tuition. We need to be able to make sure that we have priorities in place, and that's one example. We do have areas that need more work than others. I was delighted, for example, to receive SOMAS into my district, and then I start looking at how we need to be able to bolster their school there. A lot of parents aren't sending their children there. And there's things that we can do in the elementary.
Thank you very much, Ms. Parks. Thank you very much. Mr. Cruz-Thames.
Yes, I'm all.
Give you a break. Give you a little more time. Ms. Parks, you answer that question, please. Would you like me to repeat it?
What can Congress do? What can the federal government do?
What can the federal government specifically do to require agricultural owners to be more responsible towards their workers, their laborers, even if they may be undocumented?
What I think is our country is we're a nation of laws, and there are laws in place. And people who are undocumented are here because the farmers need them, and they are picking the crops in the fields. And the fact that there are abuses, for example, hearing about black market pesticides that are being used. I was so glad to see enough pressure put on the state of California to ban methyl iodide, which can actually go to cause cancer and burn your lungs. Those kind of things to protect the worker. But the agricultural owner, the farmer, they sometimes are getting fake green cards and Social Security cards, and so they aren't necessarily to blame for this either, because the problem is that these workers are needed, and we are a nation of laws, and for some reason, and I know what that reason is, they can't work together in Congress. It's kind of a wink and a nod, and it's allowing to take place. And the only way we're going to get Congress to make any laws is for the Republicans and the Democrats to work together. And right now, they cannot do that.
Thank you very, very much. Mr. Herrera, would you like me to repeat the question? Dennis O'Leary.
Okay, well, I want to address this question, if we can try to deal with it as succinctly as you can, and we'll just go down the line. Assemblywoman Brownlee. We'll start with you on the issue of civil rights and race relations. I want to know your opinion on what lessons should Americans be learning today about the state of civil rights and race relations from the fatal shooting of Trayvon Martin in Florida. What lessons does that teach us? What should we learn from? What should we learn from the shooting of Trayvon Martin? What should we take from that as we move forward as a society?
It all, and we need to stop them.
Supervisor Parks?
Well, all I can say is, please, dear God, let us learn something from that. Let us have learned something from that. The stand and defend kind of law that allows for someone to basically murder someone else because they're fearing for their life outside with someone running away from them, those kind of things, it certainly is a racial profiling. But what can you do to fix that? I spoke with leaders of the NAACP, and to hear what they are teaching their children, to see that when they are up against like an officer, that if the officer is going to push against them, you don't push back, and trying to teach them that. But I thought, what a shame that you have to teach your child that to begin with. And how we can come together, as we've done it so well with other things, for example, people with mental illness, letting us learn more about them. I think about the Israeli youth that are, putting on Facebook, "We heart you, we're not going to bomb you," to the youth in Iran. To me, we need to come together as a society and break down these barriers, because we shouldn't have to teach our children that because of your race that you're going to be treated differently by authority or by others who aren't your same race. So I just think that we need to come together. I would put together forums and try to bring people together.
And Mr. Thain, your thoughts?
So I'm going to appeal to you to try and be as specific as you can in your answers and relate it to the social, economic, demographics of the 26th Congressional District. It's very, very important. I understand these issues are, in some cases, kind of new to you, but I think it's very, very important to share with the audience the detail of information and knowledge and understanding that you have of this district, its composition, and the data that has been available to everyone through the census tracts for the last almost 2 years. So I just, I want to caution you to please stay away from the generalities, and let's try and stay as focused as we can on specifics. To Ms. Parks.
Thank you. This question will be actually for all the candidates. We have families that are broken every day in this country by immigration. We have families that one of the parents is an undocumented person, is deported. Sometimes both parents, but the kids are U.S. citizens. They cannot be rightfully legally in this country. And we go back to the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, there's more rights coming into these individuals. I spoke to the director, Alejandro Mayorkas, 2 weeks ago, who is the director of the USCIS, and was explaining to me that we have a broken system of immigration. As members of Congress, if elected, what specifically are you planning to do to stop this breaking of our families, to fix our immigration system, to do something about it? Because we have a system that is broken. We have a system that has criminalized many of our residents, not being able to become U.S. citizens just because they had a couple of DUIs or maybe other law-breaking situations that are not major, but still are unable to become U.S. citizens either. We have over 8 million individuals that should have been able to be U.S. citizens, but because of the system, they're unable to do so. Specifically, what are you planning to do to remedy that situation? Are you willing to submit a bill, to propose a bill to change that?
Having attended a social justice workshop think the first thing to do is really understanding the issue, and I really appreciate the fact that we're having this forum because it is educating, and so thank you for that. I know that you hear of a mother afraid to even drive her child to school for fear that they could get stopped and deported. And it leaves a very inhumane situation, and families are being broken up. And what can we do in Congress about it? I think we have to break down the barriers in Congress also, and having hearings is one way that we can do that. But this is such an obvious issue to me because it affects the entire nation. And I do believe that Republicans and Democrats both are concerned about this. There are specific things that I hear from both sides of the aisle that I think together we can move forward on. We have a lot of people driving around without driver's license. You know, what is that? And I don't know how many of you have been in accidents, you know, and we're finding that people who are undocumented don't have a driver's license, they're driving uninsured, and that is a liability for all of us. So to me, we need to actually have a pathway for residency, not citizenship, because we have that, and making that accessible. So I think that that's something we need to do. We shouldn't have a country full of undocumented people.
Thank you.
Yes, my question was specifically, as members of Congress, would you sponsor a bill? Would you do something about it? Specifically because for over 20 years, we've been hearing exactly the same thing that you just said right now, and nothing has been done. The state is responsible for issuing driver's license. In the state of California, people that should have a driver's license doesn't have it. Therefore, they're unable to get insurance. Therefore, they're unable to get even the book to read. There are different laws and regulations pertaining to driving. The federal government is in charge of immigration. And still, we have none of the two. Would you sponsor a bill? That was the question. To do something about this specifically. Specifically, would you sponsor a bill to fix immigration issues that we have in this country?
Without a doubt. Thank you, sir. Ms. Parks?
No.
Specifically, would I sponsor a bill? You know, I don't think I would support anyone's bill, whether it's my bill or anyone's bill. If it's a Republican bill, if it's a Democratic bill, if it's a bill that's going to be able to do comprehensive immigration reform, I would support it. Because we do need it, and I do believe we need to have people documented. And if they're documented, then I see that they can get driver's license, and it has to start at the federal level. And I think the kind of atmosphere of we need to take over the House, and it's got to be the Democrats to do it, or it's got to be the, to me, it is the partisanship specifically that is stopping this from happening. And so I think the right attitude is we need to have both parties at the table, and we all need to work towards this. And I think everybody does want to have this.
Mr. Bain, try to answer. Ms. Parks, since you were unable to make a decision on the PLA, how can we trust you with federal issues?
The PLA is a public labor, project labor agreement the County of Ventura had. And the Board of Supervisors, too, wanted to have all the construction workers go through union halls. Two wanted a less restrictive one. And I didn't get the contracts. And there were 4 contracts, each a couple of dozen pages, until 8:30 in the morning when I was to vote on it. And I am not voting on something I can't read first. And you look at the potential litigation that we were under if we, on some of those contracts, I don't want to vote on anything I don't read. And I would imagine that a lot of our Congress people didn't read the 2,000 plus pages of the Healthcare Reform Act. It's just a policy I have, particularly when faced with litigation.
I'll reserve the right on a follow-up on that one. So based on what you appear to be stating as a principle, that you do not vote for things that you have not fully read, you will take that principle and continue to apply it and practice it in Congress. So if you do not read a 2,000 plus legislation like the Affordable Care Act, you would not vote for that?
I was given something in the morning of the day of the vote. So to me, that was not appropriate. I need to be able to have the opportunity to have my staff look at it. I had a dedicated staff person to look at this. He didn't get the contracts.
But
And I
again,
don't-
but again,
But yes, I want to make sure that I have complete confidence in what I'm voting for. And I am a very astute reader, and I would read everything that I can get my hands on.
so
And
again, let me one more
yes.
follow-up now.
Do you want a direct answer? Yes.
Okay, that's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Thank you.
Yes or no? Very good. Okay.
It's a good policy, don't you think?
I have no opinion at this point. This one is from Mr. Bettis. I just want to be as fair, and I can see in Tim's head that he wants to kind of mix it up a little bit, so we'll mix it up a little bit.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, well.
And incidentally, I just want to thank you, audience. We're going to go to 8:30. Is that okay? Is that a popular demand request? Is that all right? You guys want to stay enough? Okay, because we started about 30 minutes late. I want to thank you for all your questions. I want to thank you greatly. You had some great questions. And I greatly apologize if we're not going to be able to get a lot of these good questions asked, but we're doing the best that we can. Thank you again. Okay, go ahead.
Like my fellow panelists, I want to go across the board as well, so I'll start with you, David.
Very good.
And let's see how much trouble I can get in this question here, but what is your reaction to the Republican candidate's decision to not be at this forum? Is this typical of the treatment of the Latino voting public is getting this election season nationwide by certain politicians?
Well, great question, and let me, I might need a few minutes on this one. I have some strong opinions about it. And Mr. Strickland is another career politician who has never had a real job, who's totally out of touch with what's going on. We have these folks from Sacramento and Santa Monica who are completely disconnected to what's going on. And you cannot, Mr. Strickland will not, I don't think he'll attend any debates. I don't think he'll do any debates during the general election. He thinks that he's got one of those spots secured and that he is going to be just fine. So I don't think he'll attend any of these.
Ms. Parks.
Well, I think that we need to hear from the candidates. I appreciate the fact that we have this forum, and it's important for voters to know the views of the candidates. And if they're not going to come and present their views, I don't think they deserve your vote.
Mr. Herrera.
This is another example of the East and West County divide. And you know what Mr. Strickland is saying? You know what he's saying? He's saying, you don't vote. That's what he's saying. He says, I don't have to worry about you because you don't vote. I can count on my East County turning out 60 to 70%. And I can count on the West County turning out 30 or 38%. So that's what he's not disrespecting me, he's disrespecting us. So if you care about this election, you'll get out and you will vote.
You've been allowed this one time.
Thank you, Mr. Torres.
I think it's very unfortunate that Mr. Strickland is not here. I think it is, as Mr. Herrera said, it's an insult really to all of us. 43% of this congressional district is Latino, and he can't take the time, a few hours out of his day, to show up here, share his views with all of you. And so I think 43% of this district certainly shouldn't cast a vote for Mr. Strickland, and we'll show him something.
Okay, Tim, remember, go.
Go to whoever I want. Okay, we'll go to Supervisor Parks. And kind of sticking on the same subject here, about who votes and who doesn't. What's your view of some of these voter ID and proof of citizenship laws that various states have passed? Do you think they're designed to ensure fair elections, or do you think they're primarily designed to suppress voter turnout among low-income and minority communities? And if you think it's the latter, do you think, as a federal official, should the Justice Department investigate and look into these as potential violations of the Voting Rights Act?
Well, I do encourage people voting, and I think we should do all we can. My daughter's in New Zealand. You have to vote in New Zealand or you get a fine. I like that idea. I think it is part of being an American. It's our patriotic duty that we vote. So I'm strongly in support of encouraging the vote and not doing anything that would discourage it. I also obviously would want to crack down if there is any election fraud. You know, that is a serious issue if it is going on. But in general, I want to do everything I can to encourage people to vote.
But should someone, when they show up at the voting booth, have to have a photo ID in order to cast a ballot?
I don't think so. I think right now, if you do vote, you can have a provisional ballot, for example, and then they can be looked and followed up on to make sure that that ballot is a good ballot. If you show up unannounced to a voting booth to vote, let's get that vote in there, but you also consider it a provisional ballot.
Tim, that was for Ms. Parks, right?
Yes, it was.
Okay, I'd like to follow up with you. Prerogative. I have the prerogative. You were asking just Ms. Parks, right? Ms. Parks, you made a very prerogative statement. You said that in New Zealand there's a penalty for you if you don't vote. You said you like the idea. How much do you like it? If you get elected, are you going to take it to the next step?
I tell you, I just think it is our duty. I think we should be...
Excuse me. Can you please, audience, thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Parks.
I'm generally a carrot person as opposed to a stick person. I would rather encourage people to vote and make sure that they do vote any way that we can. But I am kind of interested in that idea that, you know, it is your duty as a citizen to vote. And I think we would have different people in Congress right now if everybody voted, and I hope everybody will vote. But we need to do everything we can to encourage it. But I would consider that. I want to see if there's enough support for it. I don't like pushing things forward when there isn't support. I don't like to go, you know, I don't want to make any enemies. I want to make friends. But I think this is something that is part of our patriotic duty, and my preference would be to see that we encourage people and not have to find them, but it works. It definitely works.
Manuel, to whomever.
Thank you. This question goes to all the candidates. Here in Ventura County specifically, when we get our tax bills, we see so many extra taxations that we approve based on measures, based on bonds and things like that. Sometimes the bill goes like 12 issues there that are charging us more. And we see school districts, we see municipalities that overspend, waste our funds, and still they submit more dollars, more measures to tax us more. How do you perceive that situation from the federal government? And are you planning to do something about that to prevent it? Or you're planning to do more of that so we get more taxation?
And we have to get back to that level playing field. Let's not ask Americans to make sacrifices that we're not asking the big corporations and the oil companies. They have to make their sacrifice first. Thank you.
Sparks.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of making it easier to pass taxes on. I think right now, with the state of our economy, it's really difficult for just average Americans to even pay their taxes. Between income taxes and sales taxes and property taxes, we're being taxed to death. And we're feeling it more. And the reason we're feeling it more is because people aren't making the kind of money that they were making. A lot of people are unemployed. It's a difficult time. So right now, I would not be in favor of making it easier to pass taxes. And I also agree with Commissioner Herrera that we need to close those corporate loopholes. We can certainly simplify our tax code, make it easier to file our taxes, but also maybe even shrink the size of the IRS. If we can make it easier, we won't need all these special exemptions for corporations. And I would look towards that before I would consider raising taxes.
It's just a yes or no on this question. In view of the positions that you all have just taken, especially the last two candidates, how are you going to vote in support Governor Brown, and once they all figure out what they're going to do at the state level? Are you going to support that measure, or are you going to vote against that tax measure? Ms. Brown? Yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Herrera?
For education, yes.
And also for education, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so let's do this one more time. That's not his tax measure. That's Munger's new tax measure. So you've got, and she didn't play with it. Okay, she's doing her own thing. So are you going to support the Brown measure? Yes or no? Ms. Brownlee made it very clear. She said yes. Thank you very much, Ms. Brown. Mr. Herrera, one more time. Brown measure, not the Munger measure.
Para que me entiendas, sí.
There you go.
Yes, I also understand the Brown measure. It actually goes to cutting the pensions, the ability to spike pensions. This is also that same bill. And I think we are desperately needed in the state of California pension reform. So for that, I would support that. It's an excellent model, so that I would support that. We need pension reform.
Same. Yes, it's very good. Okay. Now we're going to go to one question from the audience, which, to what degree does God guide your decision-making? And the second one is, to what degree does God guide your decision-making, and how and if does that have any impact on women's right to choose? Really, this is not a feedback participation audience. That was a question. Let them answer it. Go ahead. Start with Mr. Thames.
That's a tough one.
I think a woman's right to choose should be between the woman, her doctor, and her faith. And it isn't government's role to be telling people whether they can have access to contraceptives, for example. And I just think government needs to stay out and stay out of the bedroom. And I also am pro-choice, and I don't think this is something that is a matter of religion or not religion, to tell you the truth.
Sir Adam.
Okay, I'm going to ask for a show of hands here. As a member of Congress, how many of you would vote to allow for additional leasing for offshore oil drilling off the Ventura, Santa Barbara County coast? Okay, in 30 seconds, Ms. Brownlee, tell me how that position helps working class people in Ventura County.
In election time, all the politicians come to our community and they say, oh, I'm going to work for jobs, better jobs, lower crime, and blah, 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 which is the same list of things that we see every election time. Specifically to you, what would you do at the federal level if you got elected to create more jobs? In the United States right now, we have a very, very high unemployment rate. Within the Latino community, that unemployment rate is greater than that. What would you do specifically to increase the number of jobs for Latinos in this country?
Get those jobs on a regular basis, as I have always done.
Of course.
Thank you. You know, while I'm thinking of it with Mr. Herrera as a commissioner of the court, one of the things that I've heard from the agricultural industry is that if they could have containerized place and storage, then they could actually ship to China. And China is a huge market. And so that is something that could actually increase considerably the ability of our Ventura County farmers to expand their businesses, expand their crops. So I think that's a great opportunity. But I do have a 10-point job plan too, and some of them, if I may, is to reduce payroll tax for new hires. By just simply increasing job training programs, something we mentioned before. We can make sure they're in the growing sectors of the economy. On the Board of Supervisors, I was able to put forward a job training program for recent graduates in healthcare so that they can get on-the-job training, because unless they have that, it's really hard to get a job. Also invest government resources in infrastructure, but things that we need. I'm not so sure about the bullet train, but I do know that we have substandard bridges. We have a levee system that needs to be repaired. We need to keep agriculture a viable industry and with a reliable supply. And I have several others, including support for our naval base, providing tax incentives for emerging technology, attracting businesses with our high quality of life, and
try to answer your question specifically.
I would ask you to look in your folders. There are two polls, one done by, well, both done by Gallup. One says, Congress's job approval at new low of 10%. You understand that? American public does not like Congress. Only 10%.
Who's that 10%? That's fine.
So now my question to you, since I'm sure you've been reading these polls and your staff has been giving you this information, why in the Sam Hill do you want to run for Congress, an institution that nobody likes and it's not getting anything done? What in the Sam Hill do you think you're so better and so good that you're going to make a difference? Mr. Herrera, let's start with you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Marks. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
I could run for Congress at another time, but the reason why I am running now, and the reason why I'm even considering running, is because I am so inspired by just what you read. Congress is broken. Congress is broken because of the partisanship where people aren't working together. It's broken because of the special interest money. And running as an independent and being elected sends such a strong message, a message that we don't want any more of that partisanship that's keeping them from getting work done. We don't want people who are beholden to special interests. And I feel like I'm running such a clean campaign in order to give that message strongly. And if I'm the first person, the only representative in the House of Representatives who's an independent, that's one. Then we need two, and I'm glad Nathan Fletcher down in San Diego decided to jump and become an independent, because that's what we need. We need independent thinkers, not someone who's just going to toe the party line because they have to when they get there. We need people who will work with both sides of the aisle. I have a proven record of that, and that's what motivates me. That's exactly what motivates me.
Thank you very much. Mr. Thames. Okay.
I have a quick question for Supervisor Parks. You've spoken several times, and just in that last response very passionately about being an independent and breaking partisanship, and you've said you don't know which side you'd caucus with or who you'd vote for Speaker as a member of Congress. I want to know, as a citizen of the United States and someone who just expressed tonight the importance of voting, who do you intend to vote for President of the United States as a citizen?
You know, there is nothing in the Declaration of Independence. There's nothing in the Constitution of the United States. There's nothing in the Bill of Rights that talks about party. And I think that is the problem. And the idea that I am running as an independent is because I am rejecting the model of pits we against them. And I want to have the confidence when I get into Congress that they know that I am truly an independent. And so I reject trying to label me, who are you going to vote for president, who are you going to caucus with, who are you going to vote for Speaker of the House. Those to me are ways to try to label me as either a Democrat or a Republican. And I have been both. And I feel so comfortable as an independent. And I want to keep that. So I have the confidence when I walk in the halls of Congress that legislators from both sides of the aisle know that I'm open to working with them. If they've got a good bill, no matter who authored it, I'm going to go ahead and support it. And they know that they have that. And what a wonderful way to have your congresspeople be. So that's my answer.
Okay, and not to be argumentative, but this is a lively forum.
Yes.
But how do the people you're asking to vote for you get a full appreciation of what you stand for?
I think the 90% of the people that we just heard about who reject Congress, who are giving them a bad rating, are going to say, we don't want another right wing, another left wing, another someone who can't get in there and work together. That's how I'm going to tell the voters. If the voters want to have someone in Congress representing just their interests, not special interests, not party interests, then you need to elect independent people who aren't caught in the problems that we have there. And they're huge problems. It's gridlocking their ability to do effective legislation.
Fair enough.
So then I guess let me follow up with all due respect. And I'm taking that based on what you've just responded, that as a matter of principle, again, you seem to be very principled, you won't be voting for the presidency.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Right now, I couldn't, if I wanted to, vote for one party's presidency because of the closed primary. And I just have to say, hallelujah, we have an open primary, that we can have an independent on the ballot. And any voter can vote for anyone on the ballot for Congress. So you don't have to worry that if you got a ballot, you don't need to change your party to vote. You can vote for anyone. And so I do feel very strongly that each person can go vote for who they want. And I am certainly not one to express a Democrat or Republican leaning. I think everyone has the right to vote any way they want.
Mr. Murak? Anybody?
Not too long ago, we had the president, same party, Congress, majority, same party, and still there were not issues resolved. What would you do differently now if that wasn't happening?
This is the only way to move these things forward.
Sparks?
Thank you. I think being the only independent in Congress with a message behind me, a mandate against partisanship, against special interests, is going to give me some attention when I am in Washington, D.C. And with that, I will look to our leaders in Congress, speak with the majority leader and the minority leader, and try to put together a bipartisan committee that, as Commissioner Herrera mentioned, it is important to take baby steps. But something as simple as a bipartisan committee to work together, I think, is one of those steps. And I know that they will be lobbying me, hoping that I'll vote for them for Speaker of the House, and I can look to them and say, what can you do towards getting us this bipartisanship? And I think that in itself will make us a more effective Congress. As an independent walking in the door, compared to, for example, a freshman Democrat or a freshman Republican walking in the door, I think I'm going to actually have more influence. And I do, as I mentioned before, hope to kind of cut a path for other independently minded people to come to Congress, because that's the best way, I think, of being able to do the people's business, not influenced by special interests or partisanship.
Okay, this question for Ms. Parks, and this is from Ms. Espinosa from Santa Paula. Santa Paula has the highest unemployment rate in the county, 17%. Why do we see reduction in services such as human services agencies, social service employees reduced by 24, which is a 51% reduction?
Well, the county has a policy, and what we do is we don't have the money, we have to end the program. Because otherwise you end up like the state of California or the federal government with an incredible deficit that hurts our economy. But there are some excellent programs that we do have, and I just want to mention one of them. And that is welfare. Instead of giving the welfare recipient the funds, the entitlements, we give it to the employer, who then hires the welfare recipient. And that person then gets job training. The employer gets half off, basically, in hiring that recipient. And as a result, it helps the employer, it helps the economy. And what a great way to empower. Instead of just give entitlements, you're actually empowering them to be able to get into the workforce. So there are great examples out there of doing more with less. And unfortunately, in this day and age, that's where we are.
Is that happening in Santa Paula, the good results that you're talking about?
Absolutely. It's countywide. It's a program countywide.
Okay, this ends the question period. Mr. Juarez would like to make some closing comments. I want to thank the audience. I want to thank you immensely for your questions. And before Mr. Juarez makes the closing comments and we tell you what the results of the poll on the straw vote is, each candidate will now have 2 minutes to make a concluding statement of why they're running, what they learned tonight, the fact that the next time they'll come, they'll be even more specific. They have 2 minutes to close and offers their closing thoughts. We will begin with none other than the distinguished County Supervisor, Linda Parks.
Well, thank you for that, I think. First of all, I so much appreciate being here this evening. I'm so glad to see all these organizations come together to present this forum. It's novel. I haven't seen this before, and I think it's wonderful, and it's a great education for the public. if elected to government, I know that people can trust me because I have a record of 17 years in office. And it's a record that shows that I don't cave in. And how important is that in Congress? You know, a lot of elected officials, once they get elected, change. Well, I don't change. I'm there for my constituents first and foremost. I am there for my country. For example, I have been able to start a lot of grassroots organizations, from SOAR that protects our agriculture and farmland, to municipal advisory councils in Somas, Santa Rosa Valley, Oak Park, Newberry Park, fire safe councils. I'm accessible. People can reach me. And I don't subscribe to one party having all the answers. I don't think one person has all the answers, but to have someone that will listen, that is there, that will hear you, and be able to formulate their decisions based on that information, that's called representation. And how wonderful it is to have congresspeople who are truly representing their district, who live here, who know the district, and know the needs. Right now, our most important problem is jobs and the economy. And there are great things we can do if we work together. I do have a 10-point job plan that you can see on my website, which is sendlinda.com. But I also think more than anything, having people there who aren't beholden to special interests. I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record, but I see what's wrong with Congress. And what's wrong with Congress is we do have people who are beholden to special interests. So I'm hoping that voters will take a bipartisan step themselves and not vote just for the party, but actually vote for the best candidate. We have an opportunity because we have an open primary. The basis of the open primary is to get moderates, to get people who aren't on one side or the other of the aisle. Why do we even have an aisle? They should be sitting every other seat, you know, instead of one side and the other.
Thank you
But
very much.
I thank you very much this evening, and I appreciated the dialogue.
Thank you very, very much.
To deliver to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brown. Some closing comments, and then Ms. Espinosa will give you the vote to tell. And the candidates. I would encourage the candidates to have that dialogue with you, to organize it. Their campaign people are in the audience. I think it would be a reflection of their commitment to this community for them to have their own dialogue session with the Latino community. I think that the questions that you addressed and you asked about the great divide that exists between one world of Ventura County and the world that's primarily in this room is a reality that has to be addressed more concretely, more honestly, more genuinely, and more sincerely. And that is a real big challenge. That challenge is up to you, much more than it is to them. You're the voters. You're going to make a decision of which of these four, plus the other distinguished gentleman from the Republican Party, Mr. Strickland. We say nothing bad about any candidates here. The Latino Issues Forum is a nonpartisan entity that has no favors. You're going to elect one of those individuals. It's you who will elect them, along with the other people in the rest of this county. But you will dictate, you should dictate what the priority should be of these candidates. It shouldn't be the other way around. So I want to congratulate the Latino Issues Forum for their leadership. And I hope that they will have the same kind of session when the first two the finishers are selected, voted by you all. But I hope that you will not let go of these issues, that you will continue to discuss them. You will expect these candidates to answer the questions. I would love to be a part of those discussions because I had 1,000 questions that I wish that they would have been able to answer. I don't know if they were prepared to answer them in regards to Latinos as much as they should have been. But I think it's a great thing that you showed up. You stayed for 3 hours. You have a great deal of tenacity, and you have the respect of many people. Now, the distinguished lady from Santa Paula on the other bridge, right, on the other side of the river. Let's not forget that. Fillmore's on that side. Santa Paula, Piru, they're all over there. So you've got to pay attention to that part of the county. She will now lead the results.
For a few years, and I have never seen a turnout for a forum like tonight. Last till 9 o'clock and the room still be as full as it is right now. So this has been a tremendous opportunity for our community, tremendous opportunity for the candidates, and we hope to see many more of these types of forums in the future. So what you're all waiting for, each of your packets that you received when you signed in contained a straw ballot like this, and oh, yeah, the candidates didn't vote, so sorry, but we do have the results, and so no drum roll, but here we go. Candidate number 1 on the ballot is Jess Herrera, and he came out with 83. Julia Brownlee was next on the ballot. She had 45. Linda Parks was next with 31. David Cruz Thane with 9.
Well, again, thank you. That concludes our event. If you, we still have coffee and soft drinks on the side here, some cookies. So if you'd like to spend more time, perhaps the candidates can be there with you. Thank you very much. Good night.